AI is changing what it means to create content, because in AI-powered search, it's not about who writes the best article, it's about whose content gets cited. In fact, recent research shows that 80% of sources cited by AI systems don't even appear in Google's top results, which means ranking isn't the same as visibility anymore, and that creates a new challenge for SEO teams. So the question is, in a world where AI summarizes everything, how do you create content that actually gets chosen? I'm Jordan Cooney, and joining me today is Karl Kleinschmidt, founder at Data Marketing Group, an 18-year SEO veteran focused on local SEO, large-scale data systems, and LLM optimization. Today, we're talking about fan-out analysis, local rank tracking, and why LLM optimization is really about intent, not keywords. Karl, welcome to the Voices of Search podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Hey, Karl, it's so much fun having you on the show. I mean, obviously, we've known each other for a long time, but you have constantly been innovating. You don't stop innovating, and this is an industry that's going through probably its biggest transformation. I just remember like a few years ago, you were showing me some like heat mapping with ranking data. And now we're looking at a whole new world with LLMs and how LLMs work. And you know, LLM optimization is really all about intent. And I want to know from your innovator mindset, what does this actually mean, and how should individuals put this into practice?
I think the biggest change is you stop thinking about what people are searching for and what they want. Right? It's no longer the right approach to say, okay, they're going to search, I want a red running shoe. They want a shoe that helps them while they're running, that looks stylish, their favorite color is red. And so you need to figure out what the intent is of what people are actually searching for. And then you can figure out, how do I best write the content to fit that intent?
And this reality of like mapping to like what users are looking for and what this intent is this a purely data-driven thing? Is this a survey thing? Is this a guess and trial and error experiment thing? Like where do you get that insight? I think that's one of the things that, you know, historically as SEOs, we used to do these like content briefs and we used to do all this other stuff, right? But now this is changing a little bit, and I'd love to know your perspective on like, where do you get the knowledge, the data source?
So my approach has been to basically, I don't know if teach is the right word, but basically provide LLMs all of the data around a company and then say, I want to figure out what are the sub-intents of a query, right? Most people call it fan out. But the interesting thing is there doesn't seem to be a clear definition of what fan out actually is, right? Like how you get sub-intents seems to change. Every person does it a little bit differently. Every LLM does it a little differently. A lot of the researchers that are really going deep, I think they're getting a better and better idea of how fan out actually works. But I have not seen any amazing tools that are like, this is how you consistently do the perfect fan out.
Right. I mean, and like fan out is like one of these components of intent, right? But I mean, even like taking a layer back, like before we get even deep into fan out, like you got to know what the prompt is, right? To some extent to even get to the fan out. And like, I think a lot of the prompt itself has a significant amount of context to intent, right? Like if you don't know that, then you're going to have a really hard time kind of breaking down intent. So like, where do you start with that? Is it understanding your audience? Is it understanding your users? Like where do you get some sort of knowledge on that front?
So I take it from two approaches. The first one is, who am I promoting? What are they known for? And what do LLMs think of them? And so I have basically built these skills and tools that go at the very highest level. So if we look at, let's use Allbirds, they're in the news. Are they the best shoe company in the world? I think most people would agree no. They are not the most relevant best shoe company for everyone in the world. Are they the best running shoe company? No, they don't really do running shoes. They do like lifestyle shoes. They do really good waterproof ones. So now we're at the waterproof level. And then you see, what do LLM think about, are they one of the best waterproof shoe companies? Currently, probably not, because they're now mostly going to be known for AI. But you figure out, what am I currently? And then you have to make this decision. Do you go up? Do you go, okay, currently I'm the best waterproof shoe company. I think I do make the best running shoes. And so then you have to write the content to convince everyone and get the citations and do all the authority building to become the best running shoe company. Or do you go wider in the vertical? Do you say, I'm the best waterproof shoe company? What are the uses for waterproof shoes? Like, what to wear when it rains. Maybe I partner with a raincoat company. Maybe I do some research about what are the best waterproof clothes. I just go that way. So you have to first make the decision, are you going wide, or are you going to try to move up a level?
And I mean, I think this is where it gets interesting, right? Because then when you go down into the fan out queries, that kind of starts to give you a little bit of that kind of fragmentation of what a user is trying to do as it relates to the primary prompt, whether it be branded or it might be discovery based or informational based. And so from what you were sharing right from the beginning, like moving beyond just keywords, going into prompts, but then more importantly, fan out queries. Like these fan out queries are essentially keywords. So are we moving beyond keywords? What is the value of that data, which is fan out queries?
I think I treat fan out queries sort of like keywords, but then you have to do in-depth intent analysis on each one, right? Like traditionally, if you have a set of keywords and they're tangentially related, you have to do some intent analysis, but you don't have to do a complete intent analysis. For fan out, there's a chance that you are not relevant at all to the fan out. And then you either have to say, okay, I'll be relevant for 60% of the fan out, but this 40% I'm not relevant. Or if you're not relevant for 70% of the fan out, that's a pretty good signal you're in the wrong space. That LLMs believe the intent in this specific query, the intent breakdown is so different from what you think it is, then something went wrong and you need to revisit your core assumptions.
So then in this relationship of trying to get to what a consumer's question is, how should we be thinking about the mapping then? Is the mapping based on our business objective and then the relationship of those intents? Like I'm trying to sell shoes, and so there are certain buyer or transactional intents, or is it really the inverse of trying to understand how the broad market is trying to do things, how all users are trying to do things, and where the volume is, and then working your way towards that intent? I think one of the biggest challenges that we have today that search volume was able to give us in the SEO world was it was able to give us some direction around the life cycle, the customer life cycle, like how someone begins the journey to the end of the journey, right? But today, within these AI models, what we're essentially analyzing is answers. And so sometimes we're just getting to the conclusion, but we're not truly unpacking where the user is and their buyer journey. And so my question is, as we look at this data, how are we doing the mapping of fan out query information or context to the end customer or user we're trying to reach?
I consider fan out like a thought exercise of trying to figure out where are users coming from. And especially, right, like with AI overview and also just pinging the LLMs, you can test theories. So for instance, like I was working on a project to figure out, does the location of where someone is searching from influence the answers that LLMs give, specifically in the auto repair space? Because I was interested in researching like if I live in Phoenix versus if I live in Minnesota, will the answers be different for something related to AC repair in the car? And so you can do these context tests where you're like, if I give you the context that I live in a specific city, or if I give you the context of something else, you can get pretty good answers for what makes the LLMs change their answers in the expected ways. And so when you're doing these fan outs, you are just doing like assumptions, and then you have to validate that the LLMs think the same way that you do, and the changes follow your assumptions. And then you have to use all possible data from actual user interactions, right? We have GSC impressions to get some data. We now have Bing Search Console to have some data there. So we're starting to get a little bit of data, but that is still the hardest part. You have to keep on simulating possible intents, collect data about what is working, what isn't, and that is still the hardest part. I don't think anyone has cracked yet how do you actually connect those two, but you just got to keep on trying and see what moves needles from the data that we have.
100% agree. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about our conversation so far is that we haven't actually answered why this is so valuable. Like, I don't think fan out queries are going anywhere. Like, I fundamentally believe that LLMs and AI models, including Google's, whether it's AI mode or whatever other features and capabilities they release, are going to be connected to how search is traditionally done, and they're going to continue to ground themselves and use RAG as a foundational way to complete certain prompts or requests from users in an AI-driven discovery process.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. And so if you agree with that, that's where I was going to go in that direction. So you answered that question. Thank you, Karl. If you agree with that this isn't going anywhere, what's the biggest thing that marketers should be doing then? Because to your point just now, like, there isn't a lot of great evidence. There isn't a ton of data sources. What should we be doing in order to best utilize the fan out data that we either can capture or are capturing?
So the number one thing is, as early as possible, collect all the data that you have. Make sure that your analytics platform has a filter set up for LLM queries, including conversions all the way through. So are you actually moving the needle? Then ingest the Search Console data via the data import, not just the UI, and then for sure create a Bing Search Console account because that is the best data we have right now from all of the LLMs.
So then, like, Karl, what else should you be doing here? Like, what are the other activities here?
So the main thing is do as much fan out analysis as possible. Pick every level of fan out is going to get harder and harder and more specific and seemingly less valuable, but also gives you a further understanding. And treat every single one of your major clusters of keywords as its own fan out process. So I have recently started working with some customers, and they have multiple major clusters. And so I have been struggling with this whole idea is like, at some point they start overlapping, and then you have this really interesting exercise of which cluster which fan out do you go with? What is the primary, right? Like, if in a pure LLM world, which we don't live in, you would probably create some sort of content for every single fan out activity. But then there will be duplicates because, right, like if you sell running shoes and hiking shoes, you're still going to ask about sizing. And do we think the intent around hiking sizing versus running sizing is going to be that different that you need unique content for each one? Maybe, but then the next level is men versus women. Is men sizing versus women sizing different enough that they each need their own intents?
Right. Yeah.
And so you keep on going down, and you do it for everything that's important. All of the things that make you money, you need a cluster and a full fan out for. And then you have to overlap them all and see where is the unique intent. And for all of those fan outs, you need the data from the LLMs, the rank checks, and the AI overviews on a regular basis to see what is changing. Go ahead.
Let's talk about these clusters, because I think this is actually the next big theme here. Like, for those of that are listening here, like this is a very deep conversation as to where and how you're analyzing this LLM data. And I don't think that a lot of teams are doing this level of analysis today. I think so many people are still hung up with the bells and whistles of visibility. But unpacking these fan out queries is foundational to understanding what consumers want and need, and even more importantly, connecting them back to your content or web strategies. So tell me about clusters and how you're connecting clusters to what a team is doing, what your actions are, and how you're investing your resources against them.
So let's imagine we work with one company and they only have one cluster. They only do one thing. You basically have a topic keyword at the top, and then you have one level of fan out. By default, I do 10. I think my Claude skill says 8 to 12, but most of the time it ends up being around 10. For each one of those queries, then I need to figure out what is the intent behind this. Are they looking for more details? Are they trying to make us specific decisions? Where in the buying process are they, and who is searching this? So when I do fan out analysis, the questions that I'm trying to answer is, why are they searching? Who are they? What triggered them to search? And what type of content are they looking for? Right? Mm-hmm. Like if I say, if someone searches, how do you tie your shoes? They got a new type of shoe for the first time, and they want a step-by-step list of how to tie your shoes. But if you are searching, what is the rubber made of in these shoes, you want informational content about, and you're a random person that bought these shoes or is researching these shoes. You're interested about the makeup of the rubber, and you read about something or you thought of something, and now you want more information. And so if you collect those pieces of information for every single fan out, you have a relatively good understanding of what you need.
Yep.
And then you have to look at what you overlap it with GSC data. So basically what I do is I pull in all the GSC data and I connect each fan out with semantically related GSC queries. And so then I have, okay, what is my average ranking, impressions, clicks for every single fan out?
Right.
Then I can be like, oh, here's a complete blind spot for me. I have 0 clicks, 0 impressions for this thing. Let's look more into it. Am I just not the right person to talk about it? Do I have no content for it? What is going on? And so then you basically do that for every single one. And then you have to make the decision, what is the right way to answer that intent? And so, like, do you need to create a whole new blog post about this? Do you need to add an FAQ question? Do you need to refresh a page? Do you need to add more citations? Whatever it is to improve and better fit the intent of that specific fan out.
All right, let's shift our conversation, because there's another main topic that we want to talk about when it comes to AI discovery, and that's local, and how local consumers are seeking out information. And for me personally, I love this because this topic, because this is something that's near and dear to me. I've been using ChatGPT quite a bit lately to do local-based discovery. I've been doing it for restaurants. I've been doing it for different service providers in my local market. I've been doing it for hotels and lodging. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating is that it is a far less capable experience than traditional search, right? The empire that Google has formulated around video, multimedia, maps and map packs and map directional like information, review concepts that are highly local and tailored. It's just pretty remarkable, and it's hard to replicate. One of the most frustrating things is when I need a map experience in that discovery process in ChatGPT. That is awful. It's bad, and it's frustrating. So, Karl, give us a little bit of like the lay of the land. My own personal beefs aside, like what's happening in this shift around local. Specifically, let's talk a little bit about AI overviews or AI mode versus LLMs and what's happening in different models when it comes to local discovery.
Sure. So I'll give a little bit of a caveat. I've now done a lot of research in 3 to 4 verticals. I don't know every single vertical in local, and the data seems to indicate that some verticals there are AI overviews everywhere, and in other verticals they are almost nowhere. And so whatever vertical you're thinking about doing local SEO for, that is the number one question you need to answer at the beginning is, are AI overviews there by default? Because they will change the interaction so frequently. I agree with you. From a local perspective, the experience is really bad. And my theory is two things. They're still really bad at figuring out where you are. And so, right, local Google Maps knows where you are really well. You are giving them some crazy permissions.
Right.
The LLMs don't have that, especially on desktop. If, in my experimentation so far, if you give the LLM enough context about where you are, they're pretty good. But no one searches like that, right? They're not, you don't search, find me the best pizza near, here's my home address. You just, Google has trained you for so long to just say, near me.
Right.
And then the LLMs will not be good at that. I think
the creepy part is that Google also knows what style of pizza you like. So if you like thin crust or New York style or Chicago deep dish, it already knows.
Exactly. And the second part is that local websites are probably some of the least structured, least rich content websites out there. So the LLMs are guessing a lot and relying on business directories a lot. Like, some of the verticals I've looked at, Yelp is just the source of truth. Like, if you look at who's getting cited, it is just Yelp. And if you're not in the top 3 or not top 5 at Yelp's, or if you're not paying Yelp, you're not showing up in AI overview or in the LLMs, which is really scary.
I mean, it is scary, right? I mean, it gives a lot of pause to like what's going to happen near term versus long term when it comes to local discovery. It also, though, I have to ask this question because I think fundamentally this is like the big bet, right? It's the the Sam Altman effect, which is like all this is going to change really, really, really fast, and I'm betting long on me winning faster than anybody else. So like, we just need to wait a couple more months and all this local stuff's going to work really well?
The location portion, yes.
Okay.
The rich content about where locations, all the information about a local business in an easy to understand method is, there's still a lot of work to be done, and so far I have not seen anyone do it amazingly at scale.
Yeah.
And the local SEO has been separate from organic SEO for a while now, but I think local SEO is coming towards organic SEO, And that is going to bring in a lot of complexities that I don't know if the local SEO people are going to be ready for. There's right fan outs at a local level are even crazier.
Right.
And
so
yeah.
So we're now getting into this like weird vortex, right? Which is like what users want, need versus what the technology's capability is, and it is quite frictioned, right? Like, I mean, Google's had a 20-year game at trying to help consumers find answers to these very local and often very specific types of requests. And so, one of the key concepts that comes to mind with local is that local really meets at this crossroads of personalization. That's what makes local work so well. And I'm curious to get your perspective on how personalization impacts local intent, how personalization impacts the result sets, and is this just one of those areas where Google's just going to win faster than everybody else because they have a lot of that context?
So, like, I'm still of one of two minds. I'm still not 100% sure on the right approach. Like, on the one hand, personalization has been in local forever. Mm-hmm. And the traditional local SEO approach for personalization has been, I can't control where people are, so I'm going to just figure out where they are likely to be and target those areas. LLMs are taking that are taking personalization to a whole nother extreme, but you still, as a marketer, can't really do anything about it. It is not a positive ROI exercise to start going around asking individual people their pizza options so that you can write them the right pages on it. So if they search for their pizza, you show up. You are still taking guesses at what are people looking for, where are they, and what is the intent behind their search. It just gets way more complicated. You have to do way more research into every single keyword, and the data that I have collected so far seems to indicate that we are going away from this is a type of business to most local businesses have 5 to 10 clusters within them. And every single one requires a cluster, a full fan out analysis. And in local, you then have to also talk about geographic intent. Like, how far are people willing to travel for pizza? How far are they willing to travel for a doctor? You have to do that for every single cluster in your business and then make an informed decision, write different content about the intent of each different cluster.
And so when we start to see this like future for local, is one of the thing is something that we should be thinking about today, the change in measurement. Like, should we be measuring local in a different way? Like, right now I see a lot of noise around measuring calls, right? Like, that the best way to measure local is on the number of phone calls, right? I'm curious to get your perspective on that. Obviously, it differs based on the types of businesses, right? Like, some businesses, it's great to have phone calls. Other businesses, it's like, no, I just need people walking in the door. I own a coffee shop. No one needs to call me. They just need coffee between like 6 a.m. and 2 p.m.
So Google Business Profile interactions, I think, right? Google is still the number one way people are going to find you. Mm-hmm. Gemini heavily relies on Google Business Profiles, AI overview, features, Google Business Profile in their sections. With some exceptions, I have now found some verticals where Google is not featuring GBPs, which that's going to open up a whole other thing where if people can't interact with you, they have to search your name and go to your website. So branded has always been important. It's probably in some verticals, it's going to get even more important. In other LLMs, they're going to send you to the website, or the people are going to Google your name. So I I don't think measurement changes drastically. Tracking phone numbers have always been a thing. I am of the opinion that almost every single local business should have a phone number. And right, I don't know if AI phone services are at the point yet where you can use them if you don't want to answer the phone, but you should have a phone number that at least says, I'm at this address, here's my phone number, here's my how you order, do you want me to text you your domain and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a good segue to kind of our last theme though here, right? Which is like, I fundamentally think that things are going to be shifting quite dramatically. And you've been a huge proponent of building custom tools and building your own kind of technology. So as we think about the shifting landscape, as we think about discovery changing from keywords to prompts and changing from rankings to what are answers, but eventually what I think all these LLMs want to do is they want to get to a conversion. They want to get to an event. They want to be able to complete the action. How should we be thinking about building custom tools, the platforms that we use, and the data that we are collecting in order to best inform ourselves about doing any form of digital marketing?
So my recommendation is always you should use all of the LLMs, assuming you have the budget, for different things. In my experience, each of them is good for their own thing, right? Like Claude is really good at collecting a lot of data and making decisions based on that, right? The way I do it is for every single one of my clients, I create a Claude project, and I have all of these skills that basically ingest in a standardized way all information about my clients. I create the project, and then it has as much context as possible. Claude, on the other hand, though, is really bad at, and I still don't have a great word for this, but like bringing down concepts to a single word, which is like, I'm sure everyone has had this LLM experience where you're trying to get it to do something, and it is just not understanding what you're trying to do. It keeps on trying new stuff, and it's just not getting it.
100%.
That's
This
where
happened
Gemini.
yesterday. Yes.
Gemini is amazing there.
Right.
If you give that to Gemini and say like, "Hey, I need a word or a phrase that explains this. This is my goals." If you then give that phrase to Claude, Claude becomes way better. And so whenever I run into those situations, what I do is I just ask Gemini, and then give Claude the phrase and say, "Oh, I meant this," and then it's like, "Oh, yeah, now I know what you mean," and just does it the way I want it to. And so that's been super fun. I use Claude Code a lot, but Codex, I've seen a lot of people say Codex is getting really good. I am mostly using Codex as a validation tool. Even the free plan is enough where you're like, I created this Python script, critique it. I have found that Codex is one of the harshest critics of your code, where like Gemini loves to do like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever had Codex tell me that. It's always like, here's 5 things you could be doing better. And then you obviously have to make the decisions. But I like putting as much content into Claude Project in the most structured way possible with standardized like readmes, what's this engagement like, so on. And then also building more and more repositories of data that LLMs are really good at reading. I, for the first time yesterday, tried a content brief specifically written for an LLM instead of a person. And I was really surprised how good they are. If you tailor it to them and you make it a markdown file with some XML in it, you can give it to like the cheap models and they do a pretty good job.
Okay.
And so I think we're all still trying to figure out, but that's currently where I'm at.
I mean, here's one of the challenges, right? Like, I think buying something off the shelf, it feels a lot more comfortable. It feels a lot easier to do, right? And all the noise, all the hype right now, Karl, is like, hey, you can replace your whole tool set. You don't ever need to buy this tool or that tool to do tracking, ranking. I feel like there's a new AI visibility tool that gets launched every single 35 seconds. And so the functional question I want to ask you, because you've been a builder for a long time, you've been an advocate of building your own tools and data. Like, where should the average SEO, GEO marketer today start? Why should they be building their own tools? And should it always be fully adopted inside of an organization?
I don't think it, so. The right, in my opinion, GEO is still 80% SEO, and I would not, if you are doing SEO right now and you're just trying to improve click performance, I don't think you have to change anything drastically right now. I do recommend to everyone that you give the LLMs as much context as you have and ask it questions and brainstorm. You're not replacing any tools. You're not building tools. You're just like, I have all of this data. I am trying to do this. Any recommendations? And you're going to find that they have recommendations for you that will be helpful, especially as you give it more and more information. I have tested a bunch of AI tracking tools, but in the end, I just go back to just pinging them directly via API, or I pay for a little bit of a middle layer, something like Open Router, where you're just like model switching is easier and you can have some additional things on top of it. And so most of the tools that I'm still using is give me the most reliable data for the cheapest price possible. I just want to consume data. I just want the LLMs to consume data, but LLMs also hallucinate. So having a source of truth I don't want Claude to try to get SERP data because it's really bad at it. Sometimes it can get it right, but if I go to Scale SERP, get the actual search results with everything nicely formatted and give that to Claude, it's going to be way better than it's trying to get all of this information. So I wouldn't recommend you start replacing tools. You don't even have to build tools. Just start testing. The smaller plans are cheap enough that it makes 100% sense to just test, give it data, see what it thinks.
Yeah, I mean, in all of this noise about like AI replacing jobs and taking people's jobs, I just keep reminding myself, I'm like, this is going to be interesting because over the next 5 to 10 years, we're not necessarily going to replace jobs. We're just going to create new jobs, right? And these new jobs are going to be very complex. They're going to require some technical depth to be able to do them. And in order to scale, you're not just being a human in the loop anymore. You're probably like a human who's evolving the way these models function or adapt to the way a business is doing things, right? And I don't think that that's simply going to be, at this point, going to be replaced with AI. So I want to transition, Karl, to my favorite part of our pod, which is the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions from our episode today. You're going to give me a 30 to 60 second response back on each of those questions. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, Karl. What's the most overrated SEO tactic right now?
LLM manipulation, where you keep on pinging the LLM and argue with it and say, no, I am actually the best.
I love that. And why is that overrated?
Because I am confident it will give you short-term results, but it's like CTR manipulation, right? Like you search the same thing over and click on the same results. Maybe in the short term you get results. In the long term, you're not bringing your client any good results.
Absolutely. What's one signal that matters more in AI discovery than Google search?
What triggers the event? I think like in SEO, if you wrote good content and had all the important words, you could rank. in an LLM, if you are fundamentally addressing the concern of why they are searching this thing, you are going to struggle to get mentioned or cited.
Okay, on a software or product perspective, build or buy, what do most teams get wrong?
So foundational data, I think we still need to buy, but they buy too much reporting. Reporting is so unique to you. You should be building your own reporting because you know way more about your business need than any SaaS company out there.
Yeah, I love that insight. That is one of the things. Everyone wants the canned reporting, but in reality, that's just so inherently unique to each business and team in many cases. All right, Karl, one mistake companies make with AI-generated content.
Thinking they're the best prompters out there. I see people say, like, I have this amazing content delivery system where I have built, it's 8 stages long, and I have perfected every single prompt. That might work for now, and it might work for the next month, but people that write really good, unique content with unique data, unique perspectives, and unique expertise in the long run are going to beat you. No matter how good you are, and there's always a better prompter out there.
If you had to focus on one thing for AI visibility, what would it be?
I think content brief creation. I like the SEO people are not content writers in most cases.
Right.
And in this LLM world, content creation is such an important part, right? Like the amount of inputs that go into a content brief are expanding weekly, right? Like these numbers are a little extreme, but it used to be a content brief is 2 pages, then it got to 11, and they keep on getting longer. And you are giving the content person so many inputs that their job is getting harder and harder, and therefore you need better and better people to write content. And so brief creation, giving them that content in the context in the easiest to understand way is a superpower, because if they get all that context, they are going to write amazing content.
Yep. Okay, that wraps up this episode of the Voices of Search podcast. A huge thank you to Karl Kleinschmidt, founder at Data Marketing Group, for joining us. If you'd like to contact Karl, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes or on thevoicesofsearch.com. You can also visit his company website, karlk.ai. If you haven't subscribed yet and want a daily stream of SEO and content marketing knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be in your feed every week. Okay, that's all for today. But until next time, remember, the answers are always in the data.